Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to illuminate the current state of our financial well-being, decode the hard data behind economic mobility, and most importantly, explore some really tangible solutions to our everyday money struggles. So if you've ever wondered why it feels like the rules of personal finance just keep changing, or, why some groups seem to climb that economic ladder so much faster than others, well, you are in exactly the right place.
All right, let's jump right into this fundamental question because it literally cuts to the heart of the American dream and makes all this abstract economic data deeply personal. For generations, the implicit promise of our economy was pretty simple. If you worked hard, you'd naturally exceed the living standards of the generation that came before you. But we've got to ask, is that promise actually still holding true today?
To get our answer, we're going to follow a quick four-step agenda. 1. The generational wealth gap. 2. The upward mobility reality. 3. Failing the money test. And 4. The educational path forward.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the generational wealth gap, Gen Z versus Millennials. Looking at some recent research compiled by TransUnion, we're hit with a sheer gut punch of reality. Check this out. When we look at 22 to 24-year-olds in Gen Z today, they earn an average of $45,000. But if we rewind just 10 years, millennials at that exact same age were earning an average of $51,000. So right out of the gate, we're looking at a pretty severe drop in foundational earning power for young folks today. And as you'd expect, this lower earning power completely shifts the modern debt landscape. It's really interesting. Gen Z actually has much lower student loan penetration. It's down to 34%, compared to the 49% we saw with millennials a decade ago. But look at that top line. There is a massive jump in general purpose credit card usage, skyrocketing from 61% up to 84%. Because of high inflation and the soaring cost of living, younger consumers are increasingly just relying on credit cards to bridge the gap left by those lower starting incomes.
Unsurprisingly, this financial squeeze is taking a real psychological toll. Today, 14% of Gen Z says they feel extremely stressed about the economy, which is a big jump compared to just 8% of millennials who felt that way at the exact same start of their own credit journeys. And frankly, only a tiny fraction, just 8% of today's young people actually feel economically secure. Pretty wild, right? Moving right along to Section 2, the upward mobility reality, climbing the economic ladder. So, zooming out from Gen Z for a second, let's look at intergenerational economic mobility across the entire United States, using some really comprehensive data from the Pew Charitable Trusts. The crucial point we're looking at here is whether children born into poorer families still have the exact same chances to achieve economic success as those coming from more advantaged backgrounds. Basically, we want to measure the rate at which families actually change their relative standing in the income distribution over successive generations. Now, at first glance, the data gives us a very optimistic headline. A solid 71% of individuals starting in the bottom half of the income distribution actually improve their rankings relative to their parents. That means the vast majority of people starting below the median do in fact move up the ladder. Sounds great, doesn't it?
Well, we kind of have to qualify that optimism because the actual distance they're moving up the ladder is pretty small. Only about 45% of those starting in the bottom half move up by more than 20 percentiles, and just 38% make it from the bottom half into the top half. The harsh reality is that exceeding your parents when you start near the very bottom of the income distribution just isn't a particularly steep hurdle. So while there is movement, true, sweeping upward economic mobility is actually pretty limited.
And things get even more interesting when we break this down demographically, because the data reveals some stark systemic unevenness. Take a look at this gender gap. Men experience sharply higher rates of upward economic mobility than women across the board. While only 27% of men remain stuck in the bottom income quintile, a staggering 41% of women stay there. Plus, women born into middle or higher income families are significantly more likely to slide back down into the bottom quintile than men are.
The data also impartially shows us an even more pronounced racial gap. 44% of Black Americans will remain in the bottom income quintile in adulthood, compared to just 25% of white Americans. And while the majority of Black Americans do exceed their parents' income rank, the distance they travel upward is markedly lower. Only about 35% of Black individuals starting in the bottom half will increase their relative position by 20 percentiles, compared to nearly 50% of white individuals. But here is the absolute most fascinating finding from the Pew report, and honestly, it offers a really clear path forward. Measures of human capital during adolescence, specifically academic test scores, can actually explain the entire racial gap in upward economic mobility. That's huge. Individuals with higher academic test scores are significantly more likely to move up and out of the bottom quintile, regardless of race, and even when controlling for whether they grew up in a single or two-parent household. Education, quite literally, is the great equalizer here. Which brings us to Section 3, Failing the Money Test, the National Financial Literacy Crisis. So, since education and testing are the keys to mobility, how is our nation actually doing when it comes to financial education? Well, frankly, this number is a total bombshell. 67.34% is the national average score on the National Financial Educators Council's financial literacy test. That's a test covering 10 key money management areas, taken by over 93,000 Americans. And that 67.34%, it is nearly 3 percentage points below the 70% passing level. As a nation, we are literally failing the basic money test. When we break those scores down by age, a pretty concerning pattern emerges. While scores do slowly increase as people age, rising to nearly 78% for those over 51, mostly because they've had to learn the hard way through years of expensive trial and error, our youth are really struggling. Less than 49% of 15 to 18-year-olds actually manage to pass this basic 30-question money management assessment. Their average score is just a 64%. We're essentially sending them out into a highly complex economy without the basic tools they need to survive. All right, let's look at solutions in Section 4, the educational path forward, structured financial education. Okay, so we've seen the generational debt piling up, we've seen the limits on upward mobility, and we've seen the failing test scores. The tangible solution to this financial illiteracy lies in implementing a comprehensive financial literacy curriculum. Now, this isn't just about handing out a few quick tips on saving. It's about a structured educational program designed to be taught across schools, community centers, and even workplaces. It's all about building foundational knowledge so people can make informed decisions way before they ever get into financial trouble. By systematically teaching these key components, we really can change the trajectory. Think about it for a second. Teaching young adults the strategic process of tracking expenses, the magic of compounding interest, exactly how credit scores are calculated, and the very real consequences of high-interest debts, these are the exact skills required to navigate that high credit card debt landscape we saw Gen Z struggling with earlier. And here is the exceptionally good news. We don't even have to invent this curriculum from scratch. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Numerous government agencies and nonprofits, from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to the FDIC, they already offer free, high-quality, standardized frameworks. These resources are already fully developed, rigorously tested, and totally ready for implementation in classrooms and communities right now. As highlighted in a recent review of modern money management, so many Americans are suffering catastrophic financial losses just due to a lack of basic knowledge. Ultimately, whether it's through structured courses, free government programs, or even just independent reading, closing this knowledge gap is the #1 way we can prevent future generations from repeating the catastrophic financial mistakes of the past. Education is, for sure, our best defense mechanism against downward mobility. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. We've seen that the economic ladder is getting harder to climb, and we've seen that education and test scores are the single greatest equalizers we have for upward mobility. Given all of that, shouldn't teaching the language of money be our absolute highest priority? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep learning and keep looking at the data.